Hello all, here we are again and in week 4 now, and this set, the last of this set for this month. I'm going to demonstrate a scene this week which may be familiar to some of you, with the emphasis on a building, and I have chosen to paint Willy Lott's cottage, which is situated in Flatford, Suffolk, and it's quite a famous house. Willy Lott was a farmer who lived in the cottage all his life, but it was made famous by Constable many times, as he featured it in many of his paintings, and especially the hay wain. So no pressure, but I like it, and I'll show it to you in a sec. These are the colours I've put out and I'm going to use. Seem to be quite a lot, but actually not as many as you may see here, as I've repeated some of them. But there's lots of green in this picture. Let's show you. And I know it isn't this time of the year at all to see all of this greenery, but it's always tricky for people, so I thought not just to paint a building, I'll do some greenery also. It's a large subject and going to take a while, so I'll probably do it in 2 parts. I'll paint the building first and maybe some of the reflection or whatever, and then concentrate on the greenery in part 2. But as you can see, there isn't very much sky showing, which is going to be helpful in keeping the reflection, if I get to do any reflection, quite light and not overworked. So lots of perspective in this building, and that's mainly why I've chosen it. It's taken from about this point, which means that there are different points of perspective. For instance, that's going away towards the distance, so it's going down. That way it's going up because it's beneath the eye line, that's above. This is above the eye line, so going down, eventually reaching the vanishing point. And this is going down in towards that part of the cottage as well. So I will attach this, and if you decide to have a go at it, just be careful about the varying angles that you see. That's going down towards the distance that way, so up that way, another vanishing point going on there. You see, that is another one. So that's partly why I chose that, because it's challenge, and also it's got lots of aspects. So this is the chart with the colours for you. I'll start with the sky, and I have my soft brush, large soft brush out for the sky. I've got 2 foliage brushes to use. I've got my flat brush out, and for the little branches and things on the tree that hasn't got many leaves, I've got the sword brush. Okay, so they're all sitting here waiting to be used. And I'll put my colours out of the way, but keep them handy just in case I need more. I've drawn it out, but drawn as little as possible. I know some people like to draw absolutely every single detail, but I'm afraid I like to leave quite a bit of it actually to the painting, and it then looks less contrived and more like a painting, and not you know, a chocolate box type or a picture book type painting. I've just masked off the fence and part of this little step here that goes down into the pond, because there's depth behind it, and that's very small and the easiest way to actually cope with keeping those pale. So not very much work to do in the sky, so I'm just going to use my ultramarine blue, but put a little touch of alizarin in it to grey it up slightly. but it's a bright sunny day by the looks of things, because of maybe a summer painting with all the greenery going on. So as always, I'm going to dampen my sky area, but I'm not going to go right to the edges of my paper. Don't worry if you go over the foliage a little bit there. I'm going to keep it a vignette, so I'm going to try not to go right to the edges. Sometimes I get carried away and I do. But it's much lighter in the centre there. So going over the little tree at the side there is a good idea, because it hasn't got many leaves, and then the sky is going to show through. So being careful. Don't worry if you go over the edges a little bit. It can be wiped away or painted over. So I'll probably do this in 2 parts because there's a lot to do. And concentrate on the building and the sky in the first part, and the greenery and the reflections maybe in the second. Right, so that's all I really need to do with the sky. There's very little going on there in the centre. It's a much brighter sky than I'm showing, but I'm going to keep it quite light because I want to actually keep the water quite light as well, and make it look a little bit more natural than I think this photograph is showing. The trouble with photographs is it shows a lot of colour that maybe isn't actually there. It also shows you everything, and sometimes you need to leave some stuff out. So beware of that. Don't let that photograph dictate everything that you decide that you're going to paint in your picture. Right, so I need for that to actually dry. So stop for a second and come back again. Right, the sky's almost dry. It's certainly dry enough. So I'm actually going to start on the rooftops now. And I've got my flat brush, and I've mixed together burnt sienna and alizarin crimson to make a lovely terracotta type colour. And so using my flat brush helps me not to fiddle and to actually get nice shapes. It's quite distant, and I want it to look quite distant, so I'm not going to put too much detail going on in there. But using my ultramarine blue while that's damp to just put a little bit on the eaves here and here and here. Letting it float a little bit in the terracotta colour, just to give some texture and indicate those tiny little tiles. They're very small, the tiles on that roof, so you don't see every tile or anything like that. So don't try to get too detailed, just keep it nice and soft. Done. Now for the next area. This is going down towards the distance, towards the horizon. Has slightly more colour in it and depth than the one I just did, and there's a hump in the centre there. It's very old. Willy Lott was born in 1761 and he lived to the age of 88 and lived here all of his life. He never married and lived with his sister in this cottage, farming. So I have some empathy with him, being a farmer's daughter. Right, so that's that one. Now there's another area of roof here, which is slightly warmer again. Constable, of course, painted it in oils. I don't know if he ever painted it in watercolour. There's a very brightly coloured tree here, which I actually wish wasn't there, but I'll have to put it in because it's true to life. So I'll put that in a minute. Can't really see much of the rooftop going on behind it. Got some sepia and some Payne's grey that I'm actually popping on here. So we're used to leaving white now, so in a nice white cottage to paint. We've been painting with white, leaving white, with our snow scenes and white flowers and lace and things. So there's some half timbering going on here. So that's going down towards the distance, it's above the eye line. Using the corner just to put another part there. I may put a bit of shadow in, but I am obviously going to have to make the eaves slightly more colourful, and the light is here, so the depth is that side, so there will be some shadow going on this side of the house. But there isn't a lot of shadow today on that particular picture. Right, let's concentrate on the chimney pots. So obviously this is going to be the darker side. Don't ever be afraid to leave white paper. It helps to bring the light into your pictures and life. Trying to sort of leave texture. It's got one of those wonderful chimneys that go all the way down here on the outside of the house. So don't forget it's a watercolour, and use water to bring in all your lovely bits of texture and shape and so on into your pictures. Right. I didn't get a round brush out, but I'm going to actually just use a round brush here now to top off the chimney. Can't see anything very detailed, so if you can't see it, don't put it in. Just indicate what you've got going on there. Right, so a little bit of shadow now going on this side of the house, I think. That's going to help obviously with perspective. So I'm using the ultramarine and the burnt sienna mix that I was using on the rooftop. So trying to keep a limited palette fairly well. Going around the windows. Dropping water on will also bring light back in and create some texture. I've emphasised the shadows a little bit more than I'm actually seeing on the picture because I want to get that form going on in the painting. But there's more light towards the front here than there is further back, so I've varied that a bit. Okay, so I'm going to leave a lot of the house, I think, looking white, because with all this greenery around it, it's going to look quite nice. Left white, I think. Right. I haven't got a great point on that bone brush. Let me find another one. Right, okay. So, popping little touches into the window for the window panes, and then I'll smarten the shape up a bit more when the wall is dry. But all I can see is some depth in there in the window. It's a bit wet, that one. Okay, so let's try and finish off the other side of the house over here. And there is a bit of shadow that's cast from the trees, I think, and also maybe part of that chimney. There's some brickwork actually around the side of the house at the bottom. Can't see much of that, there's a bush in the way. Indicate a bit of brick on here. This is greenery all around here as well. Right. Finish off these windows, which are looking quite dark, the outside of the windows. But make sure they're going at the right angle, otherwise it will look wrong. Right, that's about all I can do to the cottages, I think, at the moment. A bit more depth one side there, and I think here. Okay, right, so I've got about 6 minutes left before I have to stop and do something else. So what I think I'll do now is the roadway. Using burnt sienna with a little bit of the blue in it. Not necessary to put a great deal of work into this because it's very plain, which is good because it's a nice contrast to everywhere else that's actually very busy. So I'm hoping to get some perspective going off around that way now. A little bit of dry brushwork there as well. And so there is some shadow in there, so I'll pop that in while it's still wet. A little touch of shadow just underneath here, where the greenery is. There's some kind of wooden structure here that's holding some greenery, some plants or something. So I also popped a little bit of masking on there because there's a light strip. But I'll pull a bit of that out as well to create some shadow. Okay. So the last thing I think I'll do in this part of it is this little tree here. It's very bright. Is it an acacia or something? It's very bright and pink. As I say, I wish it wasn't, but I'm going to keep it somewhat realistic. And so I've got my, actually I think I'll start it off with my, so try out your, yes, that's going to do well. Try out your little foliage brush, make it all splayed out, if you try this or similar. And that's going to give it a good start. Try not to go over the same place too many times, otherwise you're going to start blocking it in. It is blocked in a little bit here. And then finish off with this. And putting in some branches in the little trunk. Very thin and fine it is. Parts of it is going over the chimney there. And actually taking on a nice shape at the side here. So putting a bit more depth in and stopping it from looking like a lollipop, too round looking. So that's the little tree in, which has given some perspective now to the house. So I think it's time for me to stop, get my greens ready, and start off with the foliage.